Welcome, everybody, to For Better or Worse. It is episode 7. My name is Nick. I am joined again by my co-host, Matt, and we got a special guest today, the man, Greg. Greg, how are you?
I'm good. So, first of all, I'm happy to be your first guest because I'm aware that I'm the first one we've had on. But also, I've done the first video Nick ever did. I was also there with him, and the big marketing thing I pushed on YouTube anyway was that it was Nick's face reveal. Nobody knew what he looked like at the time. Nobody knew what was he going to be. Was he going to be, some giant ugly man with a lot of warts on his face? Was he going to, was he going to be somebody who just looks like it? No, but no, he ended up being somebody who was totally normal, which was something that I don't think anybody expected at all.
No, that's usually how it goes with the internet, right? I mean, you get some real weirdos like Matt on, so it is no worries. Let's run through what we got for today's episodes and NBA recap, NHL recap, MLB slate, and we're gonna talk about Greg a little bit, and then we got our 2-legger, maybe a 3-legger. We'll have to see at the end. But guys, I mean, there's a lot of NBA we have to catch up on. Mavs 2-2 on the series. What do we think about that overall? Matt, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the Mavs, it was 2-2, and the Suns just absolutely murdered them last night. Yeah. I thought the Mavs had a chance. I really did. But then I saw that one guy on Twitter, I don't know if you saw it, his 4-leg parlay with like 40 grand to win something and need the Mavs money line. And I was like, there's just no shot they're winning this game. Just because I was like, he posted the ticket, needed 1 leg, and it just, I knew it was not going to happen. I mean, I think every home team has won that series so far. Every home game, every home team has won. So I think that's what you'll maybe see. I don't really think the Mavs can win game 6 again, but I'm just so confused at this whole series. I thought the Mavs were down for the count after going down 2-0, stole 2 games at home, or won the games they were supposed to win, and then got blown out again. So I think they're going to get blown out again in game 6, but the way the series has been going, I wouldn't be surprised if they did steal game 6 and then just lost in game 7. Greg, I don't know what you think about this series. If you've been watching too closely, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think in general, the public really undervalues home court advantage because we see this all the time where it's a team wins 2 games in a row and it's like, oh my, this team's the greatest thing ever. And then the series changes who's on home court and the other team wins 2 games. We're like, oh my God, this team's falling apart. It's just generally what's kind of expected in most of these games. Like take the 76ers Heat series, for instance. The Heat are favored in games 1 and 2. They win both those games. And obviously we had the caveat that Joel Embiid was hurt at the time. But either way, everybody's like, oh, okay, the Heat are sweeping the 76ers. 76ers are terrible. Joel Embiid comes back. The 76ers are favored to win games 3 and games 4. They win both of those games, and the narrative becomes, oh, well, the 76ers would have swept the Heat if Joel Embiid played the first 2 games. And then we go to game 5, and the Heat are favored on the betting line, and the Heat win. And then everybody's like, oh, my, look, the 76ers are finished again. Just in general, expect the team that's at home to win playoff games.
Yeah. And normally for hockey, I used to think hockey had a bigger, I know you guys don't really do too much hockey, but for me, those fans really control the tempo of the game. And I used to think that like more college basketball home court advantage was real, but watching these NBA playoffs, it really made me remember how important this is and actually how important seeding is to actually get a home court advantage. Because especially in the Bucks Celtics series that we're going to talk about, that series is most likely going 7 games, and the Celtics are now favored immensely. I think a big part of that is home court advantage. I think if the Bucks were the higher seed and had more home games, even without Chris Middleton, the line would be a lot closer.
And a quick question for you, Matt, because I'm not that familiar with hockey betting. Do you know what is home ice worth to a betting line in hockey? So like I know NBA, it's worth 3 points. So if a team are about 3 points, it could be a little more for certain situations or playoffs. But in general, we see a team where if they're it's a 6-point swing when a series changes from court to court. Is there something like that for hockey where it's like a hardened rule?
It's kind of like, I'll use the Oilers, for example. The Oilers last night, they were minus 180 on the road in games 3 and 4. So to win in regulation was like plus 100 around there. They go home and they're minus 225. So it's kind of like a 40-point swing in that way on the betting line. You know, if you see a minus 200, they're going to go to minus 240, maybe minus 250. And that's kind of the general rule, especially for those Canadian teams. And like when you play in Edmonton, it's much different than playing in Jersey, where I'm from. It's just a totally different ball game. The Oilers still lost, which I'll get into later. But yeah, that's usually the general rule. Again, I'm really seeing in these NBA playoffs how true that is, because I really didn't, you know, except for like the Warriors, maybe, you know, the Bay Area, those staple teams who have been winning at home and those crazy fans. I really forgot how much of a basketball city Boston is when they're actually good at basketball. I think that's been something different. And I think just in general, these home crowds are actually getting into, and maybe it's something different with the TV angle or something. I don't know. I can see it a lot more visibly now than I did in the past couple of years. Maybe it's because the LeBron's not in and it's not LeBron Warriors and it's still dominant in the finals. And now everyone's got a chance. I don't know what it is, but I think you're spot on with what's been going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I still think the Celtics got it. Greg convinced me earlier in the year, and we'll get into that soon. But as far as that series coming up, but yeah, no worries. Warriors up 3-1, no Ja anymore. I mean, look, I know Greg's brought it up. I've brought it up earlier in the season. I think the Grizzlies are a better team without Ja. I mean,
I don't actually think that. I think it's funny to troll people and say that because here's something that's really fun to do on Twitter is you could take a topic that's kind of controversial that you could make a case for, even if you don't believe it, and you could just drive people nuts. And what you could do is you could tweet something and you just be like, hey, the Grizzlies, because it was the case for a lot of the year, pulling up Ja Morant's on-off court numbers, is they were a lot better with him off the court, but there was a lot of caveats. So like they had this really weird run where they won some absurd amount of games in a row with Morant out, but they kept playing shitty teams or teams that were resting players against them for whatever reason. So they were just beating the shit out of, like, remember they played the Thunder that one game, and the Thunder sat their entire starting lineup and the Grizzlies won that game by like 75 points, which massively skewed these numbers. But quick, the on-off court numbers for the Grizzlies this year, they outscored opponents by 4.9 points per 100 possessions when Ja Morant was on the court, but they outscored opponents by 6.6 points per 100 possessions when he was off the court. So just based on that, yeah, they were a little bit better with him off the court, but I don't actually think that's the case. Yeah, and he's worth, in my opinion, the fair value of Morant is he's worth about 3 points to the Grizzlies. If you take him off the team, then they're 3 points worse, I think, in terms of the betting spread projection. But I do think it's really funny to tell people the Grizzlies are better without Ja Morant because they went 20-5 without him in the regular season, and then just people go crazy and argue in the replies until the end of time.
I was hoping to still do that, but no, it's no worries. You want to explain the whole thing and, you know, get all technical, that's fine. But yeah, I mean, I think they do play better defense as well. I feel like Ja just seems like, I don't know, he doesn't play great defense. Compared to like Tyus Jones or someone like that, when they can, you know, put in the rotation. I like Tyus Jones as a player as well. But overall, I think that series is pretty much over. I don't know if you guys have any differing opinions, but yeah, we can kind of push past that one and go right into the Celtics Bucks that we were just talking about. Greg, I already know which one you hope wins. Why don't you go into that? Because I know we originally talked about this when we first got on through Osimo back in the day. You had a future bet you put out and you still have it out. Why don't you walk us through that bet?
Yeah, so I have two bets on the Celtics. One is them at 27-1 to win the Eastern Conference and one at 60-1 to win the NBA championship. And a lot of it's just defense, because I think that they have, at worst, they have the second best defense in the NBA. I think it's fairly likely they have the best defense. But one thing that is a little bit of a caveat to that right now is that Marcus Smart's a little bit banged up. Robert Williams also, he missed last game. He missed some time with a torn meniscus. And he's very, like, I think Robert Williams is the most valuable player to the Celtics on defense, at least. And that's something that a lot of the public generally doesn't care as much about. So like Ja Morant, for instance, while I do think he's valuable, you just mentioned it before, he's a net negative on defense. And I would expect the Grizzlies to have a better defensive team without him on the court, because I think guys like Tyus Jones, Anthony Melton are more valuable on defense. But that aside, Ja Morant's so good on offense that it's still an obvious benefit for the Grizzlies to have him on the court. But because the Celtics team is so based on how good their defense is, and everybody they put in the rotation is pretty much a plus on defense. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, Robert Williams, Al Horford, Grant Williams, Derek White. That's the core of the rotation, the playoffs. And all of those guys I would consider to be plus on defense. So as a team, nobody scored on them in the second half of the season. And even if I remember correctly, they played a game against the Warriors where both teams were fully healthy about 2 months ago or so, maybe even more than that, 2.5 months ago. And the Warriors scored like 80 points against the Celtics in that game. It's a very difficult team to score on. And that's one of the things I saw with the Celtics is that it's a team that's going to have such a good defense that lends itself well to a deep playoff run. And in general, they were just undervalued. Like I never thought they should have been the favorite to win the championship. I just thought that there was no way they should have been 61.
Yeah, it's absurd. Matt, I know you feel you're hoping for the other side. You think this is the finals. So why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah. I said when we started our playoff segment that this is my NBA finals. This is the last playoff series I'm going to watch. Just kidding. But the Bucks Celtics, I truly do believe the winner of this takes the cake. I just think they're both so deep. I think the Bucks, obviously with no Chris Middleton, is going to be struggling a little more offensively, but defensively, they're still, even with Pat Connaughton, Grayson Allen on the court, they're still pretty sound defensively with Brook Lopez as their rim protector, Giannis in there. Jrue Holiday's a fantastic defender as a guard. I think that most people don't really put into account. I love this series. I was a little late on that Celtics train. The only reason why I want the Bucks to win, just to let you guys know, is I did a crazy futures parlay with like 3 UFC fighters that were like plus money. The Rams to win the Super Bowl, the Bucks to win the NBA Finals, and the Avalanche to win the Stanley Cup because I was like watching UFC fights and just like might have been a little intoxicated and just put like $25 on this crazy thing to happen because I was up and just wanted to do something fun.
What does that pay out?
Like 40 grand, 45 grand. So that's why I want the Bucks to win. I was a little late on the Celtics train. I got them on a single futures bet at 22-1 to win the NBA Finals. So not as early as Greg, So I thought I was cool for the 22-1. Put in my place today, but I really think that this Celtics team it's awesome. And when Boston is a good basketball team, the NBA benefits like crazy, especially when the Lakers aren't in it, and the guys like Kevin Durant aren't in it, LeBron. The city as a whole is just such a good basketball city that I think people my age forget about just because, I'm 25 years old. I didn't live through the dynasties that really came through unless you count the Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, Paul Pierce dynasty, which, really kind of underperformed just because LeBron came, I guess, and kind of ruined that whole thing. But the one guy I like a lot on the Celtics that I think is huge for them is Grant Williams. I think Grant Williams is such a tenacious defender, and he could actually put the ball in the basket when he wants to. I know there's a joke on Twitter where it came out that he wanted like ISO ball, like Jason Tatum and like Jaylen Brown. And then he got stuffed at the rim by like Gilgeous-Alexander in a random game against the Thunder. And everyone was laughing, blah, blah, blah. But this guy, he could pull up from 3 when he wants to. He could put his head down, go to the rim. He's not going to let you walk all over him. I've seen him step in Giannis's face. I think every single person on that team, not even just Marcus Smart, he kind of gets most of the credit just because of the Defensive Player of the Year award. But that guy, Robert Williams, all these guys are just tough as nails. And it just reminds you of like a 90s playoff basketball team with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown who can score 50 points whenever they want to. I think they're a fantastic team. I think the Bucks need Chris Middleton to beat them. This is a crucial game 5. This is the best game to watch so far this season. I'm going to sit down with some popcorn and some beer and watch this thing. For Greg's sake, I hope the Celtics win. For my sake, I really hope the Bucks win. I'm just going to put that out there. But this is the game to watch. This is the game for the playoffs that I think you have to watch. And I do agree with Greg. I do think the Celtics take this at home. I might not take the -6 or 5.5 is what it is, but I think they pull out the W.
Yeah. No, most definitely. we go right in because we're going to get into both that and the Warriors Grizzlies games a little bit later as far as plays. So Heat going up on the 76ers. I mean, I think that series is done personally, but it is still 3-2. Anything can happen. Embiid hit his. I didn't actually watch the game last night. I was watching MLB instead, but I heard he hit his face again, or someone hit his face. I don't know how much that's affecting him, but the Heat are such a deep team and they play great defense. They spread the ball. Hell, they got a guy that they're paying $90 million to isn't doing anything on the bench. So not to say that's good, but
yeah.
What are you guys' thoughts on the Heat? Is there anything left there? Or, I mean, I think it's pretty much done.
I think the 76ers are going to be and should be favored in game 6. I don't know if do we have a lineup yet for that game? Let me check.
Probably.
Like, I would assume the 76ers are favored.
I would think so too, but
I think you're gonna get a lot of people coming in betting the Heat right away.
Yeah. So I'm most likely gonna end up betting Philadelphia in that
minus
game.
Sixers minus 2.
Sixers minus 2. What was the spread for game 4? Do you guys remember?
I don't.
I think it was Sixers like minus 1.5 or minus 2, maybe. I remember the money line being like minus 125.
Are you guys familiar with zigzag theory?
With the like winning each game, losing one.
So there used to be something that happened in betting lines, and it doesn't happen anymore because lines makers are a lot smarter, where people would just massively overreact to whatever the results of the previous game were in a playoff series. So let's say game 1, the book decided that the fair line would be, and I'm just making up a number, 76ers minus 2 over the Heat. And then let's say the Heat go out and they win by 20. Then all of a sudden the next line would be like, all right, same situation, same team is home. And then the Heat would be favored by like 4 points or something. So the idea would always be is you bet against whatever the result would be in the last game because books would overreact. And
yeah,
now the books are a lot smarter in terms of making lines where it's just, this is the line for the series and this is what the betting line should be. Like the fair line is this number and it's that same number every single time these teams play in that same stadium, barring any injuries that change any circumstances. But if we're going to see the public really bet the Heat heavily because of the results on the last game to where it moves the betting line, like there's no reason to think the game 6 line in Philly should be any different than the game 4 line in Philly. It's the exact same game. So if the line ends up being massively different in that game, then I would be inclined to bet the 76ers.
It's minus 2 for game 4. It was minus 2.
So it's the same line right now. If it's to move significantly based on any kind of public action because of what happened last game, then that is a spot that I would be on the 76ers.
Yeah. Again, I didn't watch last game, so I didn't know exactly how it went, but I love this Heat team overall. I think they play great defense. They spread the ball. They got plenty of scorers. And yeah, I mean, yeah.
I just for some reason can't come to like my senses and think that the Heat can win the NBA Finals. They definitely can, but like, I mean, they're technically one game away from being in the last 4 teams left. But just something in me is like, this team should not be as good as it is. They seem to have the most random guys step up throughout the whole season. And never in my mind was it like, oh, like look out for the Heat. Like when I bet the Bucks to win or the Celtics win, I was like, the Heat are up there. But for some reason, like the psychology in my brain was like, this team is not going to win. And they're just proving me wrong every time. Now, I do think the Sixers take game 6 in Philly, but I don't think that they can win a game 7 in Miami. They definitely can, but I don't think it's going to happen. And then when the Heat are in the Eastern Conference Finals, if they are, maybe I'll change my mind. But then again, they're going to play the Bucks or the Celtics, and my brain's going to think they should get smoked. So I'm not touching that team. I cannot stand them. I used to be a huge Dwayne Wade fan. You see his Marquette jersey hanging right there. I used to love that team. I would be lying to you if I told you I was some huge fan of their team now. But even the guys that they just have to step up on a daily basis. They pay Duncan Robinson like $90 million. They don't even play him. Eric Spoelstra is a fantastic coach. I think people kind of forget that in the coaching game. They don't have Jimmy Butler's a superstar, but he's not going to give you 50 points a night. So he's also contributing to the fact that while these other guys are stepping up, he makes everyone on his team better. And one of these days, I'll admit that the Heat can win the NBA Finals. It's nothing against them. It's just psychology. I don't know if you guys agree with me. It's like I just cannot see it in my mind that they can win, but I do think they take the series.
You got a mental block. It's because you're up north and it's the smoggy air and I get it.
Miami's so far down there. It's just ridiculous. I don't want to pay attention to that.
So far away, it doesn't even exist, right? Yeah, it's just like it's just a place, make believe place.
I think. Let's see. What are the current? I think it's probably like 10-1, right? If you play the season out 10 times, they probably win once out of those. I'm all about probabilities, so I would never say a team doesn't have a chance, other than like the Knicks don't have a chance to win the championship right now. The Nets don't have a chance to win the championship right now. But the Heat have a small chance, and there's a lot of variance, injuries come into play. So I would never totally write off a team at this point in the season. Although the Grizzlies I'd probably write off, but the Heat I'd say like 10-1 is the fair odds, and also just defense. I mean, actually, if there was any kind of year where you wanted to say defense wins championships, these are the top teams by defensive efficiency this year. Number 1, Golden State. Number 2, Boston. Number 3 is Phoenix. 4, Memphis. 5, Miami. 6, Dallas. So the top 6 teams by defensive efficiency in the regular season are all left in the playoffs right now.
Yeah, and it's funny because like every league is like a copycat league, right? Like the Warriors, when the Warriors win the championship, everyone's like, oh, we need shooters. We need shooters. We need shooters. If the Celtics win this NBA Finals or a team like the Heat, it's going to be, I want a rim protector and some defense. And that's what they're going to be focusing on. And it's so funny to see that transition from a few years ago when everyone just wanted the long ball, which we still do. But it seems like there's much more focus on defensive efficiency, as there should be, which, your casual NBA fan thinks that there's none of in the NBA, which is just funny to me when people are like, oh, that NBA players don't play defense. No, these players are just flat out good. And like, it's incredibly hard to stop them when they're playing. Imagine trying to block a Kevin Durant jump shot or a Giannis putting his head down, driving to the lane. You have the Celtics who are proving that Giannis is invincible or not invincible, which something the Suns couldn't do last season in the NBA Finals. I think this is a huge wake-up call if the Bucks do lose this series, and teams, if the Celtics go on the run, which I do think they will, I think it'll be a fun draft to watch and see what people kind of focus on.
Yeah, most definitely. I think we should go right into some NBA slate as far as tonight's game. Bucks at Celtics, game 5. Obviously, Al Horford had that huge game, just absolutely dominated, took over, and good thing because Robert Williams was out. Do you guys think he steps up again, or who do you think will step up in this game overall? I mean, obviously, just a guessing, but.
So, I mean, the Bucks defensive scheme lends itself really well to guys like Al Horford and Grant Williams, because the way that I compare the way that Budenholzer runs his defense, kind of like, the adage in football where it's Bill Belichick takes away other teams' number one option. That's often what the Bucks do on defense, where they're not going to let Jason Tatum beat them. They're going to send double teams at Jason Tatum. They're going to try to force him to parts of the court that he doesn't want to be on. But the sacrifice is that they're going to let secondary and tertiary options shoot as many open threes as they want. So over the first couple games of the series, there was a crazy amount of open threes that guys like Marcus Smart, Al Horford, Grant Williams were able to take. And the Bucks will live with that. That's why they're one of the worst teams in the league at defending the three-pointer. So oftentimes when you're playing against the Bucks, it's going to come down to, will the other guys on the team make shots? And to this point in the series, the answer has been yes. And I know that the series is tied 2-2, so it's not like it's been one side or anything, but just the point that you said where it's Al Horford at a big game, it's not that surprising. And that's also why I know that you guys aren't necessarily DFS guys, but Al Horford is way more expensive for DFS in this series than he was during the regular season. He's playing more minutes, but he's also putting up massive box score lines because he gets so many open looks from three. So Al Horford this series has played a massive role by just being able to knock down open threes. Same with Grant Williams, who Matt had mentioned before. This is by far the most productive we've ever seen Grant Williams since he came to the NBA, because he's been knocking down corner threes in this series, and he just gets free reign to shoot them. So Al Horford is not a 50% 3-point shooter, but he might be when he's left open on all these attempts. And this is what he's done so far in the series. Game 1, 4 of 9 from 3. Game 2, he goes 1 of 5. Game 3, 4 of 7. And game 4, he was 5 of 7. We're not going to regularly expect him to shoot 5 of 7 from 3. But once again, if you give Al Horford open threes, he's going to make a lot of them. So to answer Matt's question, I don't think he's going to put up the exact same numbers as last game, but he's situated to have a really big box score game.
I agree. Do you think if you're Budenholzer, I know this year, I know you're not down 3-0 in the series, but series tied 2-2, big game. Do you stick with the system, or do you kind of?
The system got him there. So
I know, but I'm saying the system in this series, like, do you stick with letting those guys make shots, or do you overreact to Al Horford and Grant Williams, and do you kind of play them more honestly?
No, I mean, it's just his defensive philosophy, and he did it when he was with Atlanta. He did it, last year when they won a championship. This is just how he approaches the playoffs. And I know that the team still got torched by Kevin Durant in that series last year, but that is because Kevin Durant's just nearly impossible to stop when he's making shots. But this is how he coaches his team. This is how he runs his defense. And, overall, they were pretty mediocre defensively this year. They only finished 14th in the league in defensive efficiency. They have the worst defensive efficiency of any team remaining in the playoffs. But that aside, I think you kind of have to do with what your philosophy is. It's hard to change something on the fly in game 5 of a pivotal playoff series, because then I think you're kind of setting yourself up for failure if you're totally rewriting the game plan of what you've always done.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think they're better defensively when Brook Lopez is there. I know he missed some time. So maybe they're not the 14th, maybe the 10th. I think they do get a little bit of a bump when Brook Lopez is on the floor. But yeah, I think people just think, oh, Giannis is on the team. He's the rim protector, former defensive player of the year. But, them as a whole, Bobby Portis is tough as nails, but he's not saying he's like a Rudy Gobert at the rim. I think it's great to see these guys go at it. One guy I'm looking at is Grayson Allen, who seems to be doing better on the road. He just likes to be an asshole and loves to just make fans angry. I personally am a big fan of Grayson Allen. I think he plays hard. Has his leg been in a bad situation, in a bad area, in a bad circumstance a couple times in his life? Sure, I get it. But I think he plays with tenacity. He's very, he's not 6'9", super athletic. He's just, barely over 6'2", and he can shoot the ball. He's very aggressive when you watch him in the game. And in the Bulls series, looking right here, he had 22 and 27 in both games on the road. Not saying he's going to do that today, but he seems to be more comfortable in opponents' arenas. And the first game against the Celtics on the road, he had 11, going 3 for 6 from 3 as well. Since then, he was 2 for 4 with 5 points in game 2 on the road, and then struggled at home in both games, at least scoring the basketball. He might be a guy I might look at just because he seems to be more comfortable in opponents' gyms. That's kind of where I'm leaning today.
Yeah, I mean, that's not crazy whatsoever. He does have that phantom leg syndrome, so it's a very serious condition. I don't think we should make fun of it, but it's all right. I'll give you a pass there. Let's get right into the Warriors Grizzlies, because I know we want to talk about some MLB as well. Obviously, we talked about No Ja, which opens up some things. Titus Jones his line was set at 12.5. He got 19 last game. Obviously, you got Jaron Jackson Jr. if he can actually stay in the game, which is doing a lot better. I was betting his unders earlier in the playoffs. I mean, they were really profitable until they got to like 11 and 12, and then they got really scary. But he can foul out in a quarter and make it, yeah, that's just what he does. But I mean, is there anything you guys want to attack there, or is there anything you see as far as the game, as far as the Warriors on my end, just real quick? Yeah, I have been avoiding them just because it's like, pick your poison. I say this a lot with some of these teams. Poole can go off one day, Curry the next day, Clay the next day. It's just like, yeah, I can't figure them out that very well. So it's best just to avoid. But what do you guys see? We'll go with Greg first.
So let me see. When I looked earlier, we didn't have any of the prop lines, or at least when I was looking yesterday, there weren't prop lines up yet for the game.
DraftKings, the points, assists, and rebounds are up.
Everything's up for FanDuel. If Matt, I don't know if you have anything, if you want to give Greg a little time on his end, maybe look at.
It's funny how much this line has changed just being in Memphis. It's +4 for the Grizzlies. I'm not going to bet a team in a must-win game, obviously, at home for Memphis, but this Warriors team is just too many veterans on it for me. I'm probably not going to touch a side. I do think the Warriors finish this series out. I think John Morant, analytics aside, locker room presence when he's on the court, I think it gives them an extra push mentally. And I think when you're down 3-1 back against the wall and you don't have that guy on the court with you, it's tough to kind of, build around that. So that's kind of where I say I'm probably going to stay away though with the line.
So one thing we don't have yet is some of the alternate lines, because I'm kind of curious to see what some of the bigger. Oh, here actually we do have these up. So Jaron Jackson Jr., I know you mentioned, Nick, in terms of the foul trouble, and it's a massive concern with him. He takes some of the dumbest fouls I've ever seen. He's got an IQ oftentimes like 3 when he's defending dudes on defense. And it's just like, oh, what do I foul now? Sure, I foul now. And it just plays away from the basket that don't even matter. If one positive for Jaron Jackson Jr. in this series is he had to match up against Karl-Anthony Towns a lot in the first round of the playoffs. And this series, he's matching up a lot more against guys like Draymond Green or Kevon Looney, which that lends itself much better to being able to avoid foul trouble. But with Morant out, Jaron Jackson led the Grizzlies in usage this year to 30. He had a 30.1% usage rate without Morant on the court. And I know that he didn't make his shots last game. If I'm not mistaken, I think he was 0 of 7 from 3. But from a scoring upside perspective, it's just encouraging to see that he's willing to take that many shots. And I think that's going to be the case again today. And I'm not going to write the game off as a blowout because, like you said, the spread's only 4 points. So it is expected to be fairly competitive. I would be looking at some of the alternate lines for Jaron Jackson's points because I know that how I'm going to be projecting him today is I'll be a little bit conservative with his minutes from a DFS perspective. But if you start to project him to stay out of foul trouble and get to like 34, 36 minutes, then you'd be looking at like a 22, 23 point projection on Jaron Jackson Jr. It's really hard to do that because of the foul concerns. Yep. But I think the upside's there for him. So if you take some of the alternate lines where it's like him to score 25 plus points at plus 450, like I don't think that's crazy because that's a number that probably won't be too far off from what I would actually end up projecting him at.
Yeah. No, most definitely. I also am comfortable with the under 17.5 as well. Same time. It's the only player in the league. I'd be like, oh yeah, 30 or under 12.
It's kind of like if you're doing DFS, I would put that guy in like a big tournament lineup because, you're either going to boom or bust. Most people will stay off just because of the foul trouble. And he has the volatility to get 25 or 5, and I know if I'm in DFS, if I'm in a tournament, I'm going to want a guy who has low, who's not really owned by anyone, has low percentage of owned in that tournament. And Jaron Jackson, I think is very valuable in a DFS line, at least in my opinion today. Obviously it can blow up in your face, but that's the name of the game. I do love Jaron Jackson. I invested in his sports cards a couple years ago. Then he broke his leg like 15 times was what it seemed like. So that wasn't the best investment on my end. His ability when he's not injury prone or foul trouble prone is, I think the sky is almost a limit. Not saying he's gonna be a superstar, but I think it's almost like reserve all-star status if he's playing and he's able to foul whoever he wants and not get hurt. I think that's.
I thought he should have been an all-star this year.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of Jaron Jackson Jr. Obviously, got to fix some foul trouble. But yeah, I mean, he knows he's the guy too, in a sense. Obviously, guys like Desmond Bane, Dylan Brooks, and things like that are gonna, they're gonna take their shots, but he's more of the veteran-ish guy on the team, and he knows he has free reign. So I'm with you there, Greg. I think he can have a big night if his hands and feet and body slide where he needs to go.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Let's hop right into the MLB slate because we still got to talk about Greg, obviously. So as far as MLB slate, we're going to talk about some late games. Red Sox versus the Braves. I picked this one in particular. I do like the Red Sox money line. It's -110 right now. Matt, help me out with these names. My gosh.
Nathan Eovaldi
and Ian Anderson. I'll name that one. Thank you.
You don't know Ian Anderson? What tripped you up? The Anderson or the Ian? Like these names you've never seen before?
I knew Ian Anderson. It was the other one.
Yeah.
Look, Greg, we're a team here. We try to help each other out, however we can, blah, blah, blah.
What are some other hard names for you? Tim Johnson?
Yeah, Mike Smith, the Oilers goalie, Mike Smith.
Look, guys, you got me.
Smythe?
Mickey?
Red Sox +110. I like and I don't. The Red Sox have been really disappointing all year. Well, they've won 11 games, but they've been pretty much disappointing.
Recently.
Yeah. They did blow out the Braves yesterday 9-4. I really like the pitching matchup overall. I'm hoping and expecting the Red Sox to kind of pick it up with the bats like they did yesterday. Matt, that's kind of your neck of the woods as far as the Red Sox area. And I know you're on Devers all the time. What are your thoughts as far as the matchup?
Well, besides Mike Trout and Ohtani, Rafael Devers is, in my opinion, my favorite player to watch. I think he's an absolute stud, super young, looks kind of like Rafael, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. He's just big, got a little bit of a gut, big baseball player body. Just love to see him absolutely mash baseballs. He's just a great, fantastic player to bet on. His bases are always plus money, basically. It's been made me and our listeners and my followers on Twitter a lot of money. Ian Anderson, don't get me wrong, is a good pitcher. I liked him in the playoffs last couple of years. But Eovaldi for me is obviously the Red Sox ace. For you to get Eovaldi and the Red Sox at plus money, I never think that that's a bad bet in general, especially with the lineup that they should have. I understand recency bias may tell you otherwise with their struggles up until yesterday. I also am a big Mets fan, so, I hate the Braves, but I'm not going to say the Braves are a bad team either. But any chance you get Eovaldi at plus money, I think it's worth a shot.
Greg, did you look over the game at all, or you have any input on that?
So not for that game in particular. There is one game that I do like betting. It's the under in the Angels Rays game, mostly because of the pitching matchup we have between Shohei Ohtani and Shane McClanahan. If we're just going based on this, might be the best stuff matchup we've ever seen in a baseball game between Ohtani and McClanahan. And both of them have produced really good results so far this year. So Ohtani, his strikeout numbers have been absurd. And something we've seen that's been a bugaboo with him in the past has been walks. That has not been the case this year. He only has a 4.6% walk rate. He's striking out 38% of the hitters he faces. So Ohtani's numbers so far this year, 3.08 ERA, 2.49 expected ERA. Then on the other side, McClanahan, 3.06 ERA, 3 expected ERA. His strikeout rate is 36.7%. So we have two pitchers that have strikeout rates nearly 40% going head to head. So there's going to be a lot of swing and misses in this game. And I understand these are two good offenses in the Angels offense and the Rays offense. But one thing about the Angels offense is they strike out a ton. And when you consider also the amount of strikeouts that McClanahan generates, he might just put up a crazy amount of strikeouts. So I haven't seen any strikeout props yet. I don't know if you have yet, Nick or Matt. No. I haven't seen any for McClanahan. I would expect it's going to be a really, really big number that I'm probably not going to be able to bet. But I think that this sets up fairly well for McClanahan to be able to limit the Angels offense. And then also just how good Ohtani is. I'm going to side with under 7 runs.
Yeah.
It just came out, just so you know. It's over 6.5 for Shane, and Ohtani is over 7.5.
Yeah, 6.5 is not a bad line for McClanahan on any given night. I was going to ask you what Shohei's was, because both these teams are high strikeout targets. And if you got two pitchers with some nasty stuff, you're going to see a low scoring game unless you see some bombs happen. And what's funny for me is that looking at ISO numbers over the last, this season, last season combined, really the only player to worry about against McClanahan is the opposing pitcher, Shohei Ohtani. So if he's more focused on the mound and, isn't as sharp at the plate, that's more favored towards the under. I wish you could do a total overall strikeouts in a game on this game, because both pitchers should have an absolute field day. And, it's a good game for two top teams. If I'm the Angels, you're finally winning early, right? It's the year that you guys think you guys can go to the playoffs. The Rays have been in the playoffs and in the World Series the last, couple of years. This is not that they're the same team. This is a good test for the Angels. And Shohei Ohtani has been absolutely impressive, obviously at the plate, but more impressive on the mound this year. I will definitely give him that. It seems like he's throwing harder. His nasty stuff is moving more than it was last year. He's hitting his spots better, which I think is what his issue was with walks was last year. He wasn't really painting the corners as nicely. But I saw him strike out Devers on 3 or 4 pitches, and it was all I needed to see. I definitely like that underplay. Is it 7 or is it 7.5?
It's 7
so for McClanahan, it's 6.5. And sorry to jump in, but no, McClanahan has at least 7 strikeouts and 5 of his 6 starts this year. That is not a good line. That should be higher. That the number should be like 7.5 for McClanahan, not 6.5.
Is it up on FanDuel?
It's up on FanDuel.
So one thing FanDuel's been doing is they've been putting their pitching lines up so early, and then it seems like they're adjusting when the other books come out, because they're not up on any other books. Like Freddie Peralta, me and Nick were talking in the morning, his over 6.5 strikeouts were plus 130. And then I was going to post it, and then all of a sudden the line moved right when DraftKings, MGM, and other books opened their lines at 6.5 and minus 130. And then they moved their line minus 130, eventually creeped up to minus 170. But it seems like FanDuel in the morning is kind of just rolling whatever. I don't know what if they have a third-party software on their betting lines or not. I know most books do, but it seems like they're just not getting like, I don't understand. They're just not getting it. I don't understand.
I'm cool with it. Yeah. I mean, keep doing it. You're doing a good job, FanDuel.
I just don't understand. I mean, like, I think that line's going to move. I think you'll see a 7.5 or 6.5 at minus 150 before the day's over.
Oh yeah. 100%. No, 100%. But Angels do strike out a lot. Even though they have some great hitters overall. Taylor Ward's the real surprise so far this year. I love him as a player. Hit him up earlier for 2 bases, and they keep giving him plus today it's plus 160. Not to say it's a good matchup, but that's pretty much been him all year, and he's hitting over 360. So
actually, one thing I will point out to avoid the under is that the Rays just got no hit yesterday. And that's the only mental thing I'd be like, well, they're going to score some runs today because they're pissed off. Not that there's any analytical response to that, but just off of that yesterday's game alone, Detmers was having an absolute field day with that Rays team.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's really going to matter with Ohtani, but that's nonetheless. Let's go right into Greg and talk about Greg. Greg, you ready to talk about yourself? Are you excited?
Ask away. Let's. This is going to be my 60 minutes.
Yeah.
Hour
and 20.
So Greg, these are all questions from Matt, because I had Matt ask questions because he knows really nothing about you. So I figured
you are a handsome man behind a microphone is really all. I did some background research, but besides that,
Okay.
So
ask away. By the way, and it's not like Nick knows me all that well either. He's just called me on the phone. I don't. How many times do you think you've called me? 1,000 times? 100 times?
Yeah, they're easy. All the time. When you get Greg's phone number, you call him all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, plain and simple. Greg, we once heard you were a comedian back in the day. Tell us about that and your transition into the sports world.
So I mean, overall, it's a really long story, but I'll tell the abridged, the abridged shortened version is more or less. So when I was finishing up college, I knew that I did not want to be somebody who's going to work a normal job. It was just not going to be something I wanted to do. So the day after I graduated, I went into New York City. I started doing open mics, started doing stand-up comedy. I liked it a lot. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I don't care how much money I make. I don't care this is what I really like to do. This is what I'm going to do. And I did that. I was doing, 7 days a week. I'm taking the train into New York. I'm doing open mics at different places, starting to get spots at comedy clubs, starting to run my own shows. It's going well. And then I started to get sick. I have Crohn's and colitis, which I didn't at the time, which basically made it so I couldn't travel anymore. So that was an ongoing issue for me. And basically what I did while I was sick and couldn't do anything else, I just started playing a lot of DFS, and I didn't have anything else to, I probably 6 months I was bedridden and couldn't go anywhere, couldn't do anything. And all I did was play DFS, and I started writing blog posts on a site called Basketball Monster, where I'd just be like, hey, these are the players I like today. And all of a sudden it started to become a thing where people started to ask questions, or people would start to engage with me on it. And after a period of time, it led to a writing job. And I tried to get back into comedy. I got sick again, but basically I just stuck to playing DFS, just started putting out content. And then one day I won a tournament for $6,000 on FanDuel. Then a week later, I won a tournament for $12,000. And all of a sudden it was like, all right, now I have some money in my pocket, and started a podcast, and just things kind of snowballed from there. Sports betting became legalized. I started to get a bigger DFS bankroll where I can make more money playing at it. So it's the really shortened version of a story that I could tell for a really long time.
So how long? Yeah. So how long have you been in the DFS? When was that time period?
So the first deposit I made at DFS, so I started playing on FanDuel, and it was actually because I saw a commercial. Remember when there used to be commercials and ads all the time for DFS. Now it's sports betting that we see a lot of commercials for, but back in the day, it used to be sportsbook. So I was actually on spring break my junior year of college, and I saw a commercial for FanDuel. I was like, oh, this seems like fun. So I put $20 in, and it was just something I would do when I was studying for a test and I was bored, where I'd be like, hey, I'll play for $1 because I was a broke college kid. I don't have any money. So I'll play for $1. And then eventually the dollar I played for every night became $2. And then it was I played for $5. And actually that same $20 I put in now is my house. It's my bankroll. So it's something that turned into the initial $20 I put into FanDuel ended up becoming hundreds of thousands of dollars, just based on me starting by playing $1 a day and just grinding every day.
Yeah.
That is a fantastic story. I think you should frame a $20 bill and hang it up in your house. I think
it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be like Mr. Krabs' first dollar he ever made, though, because it's a different dollar. It's not the.
I understand, but it's a good, wait, why is that there? Let me tell you a story. Do you like DFS? That is a fantastic story. No, seriously, that's awesome. So if you didn't get sick and couldn't travel, do you think you'd still be a comedian today?
Probably. It's so hard to say, though, because COVID and so many other things have changed. I don't know what would have happened. I know I still have some of my friends I keep in contact with. One of my friends just had one of his sets go up on Netflix, did a Comedy Central special last year, Luke Moniz, and I talked to him about that stuff, but I just don't know, because there's so many variables. I think I would have wanted to, I was progressing, I was doing well, but who knows? And I think what I do now, it's not that far removed from entertainment, because I'm constantly doing live shows and recording videos. I do my basketball DFS shows 6 nights a week on the Awesemo YouTube channel. I'm doing my betting VODs and stuff. It's all tied together. The skills that I used the skills I learned when I did comedy, it all plays into DFS, sports betting, in terms of putting out content. So there's still an overlap there. Things come together.
Okay. Yeah, no, most definitely. And obviously being an experienced bettor, do you have any couple tips or advice for new bettors, whether it be DFS or, regular sports books, but anything that you can share with, the audience overall that might help them out, whether they're new or old, or just, overall?
Yeah. So, the easiest thing that I think to explain to people is, if you're going to bet a sport, where I think the easiest way to find value would be basketball and just keeping up on the injury news. So if you have a good news source and you have alerts set on to your phone, say from like Twitter or whatever, if we get news that, let's say, Giannis was unexpectedly ruled out today, like your instant reaction should be you immediately go and you bet the Celtics before the line moves. And I think that's the easiest way to make money in sports betting, is you just react to news as quickly as you possibly can, because all the lines are set, assuming the teams operate as is. And then if you get a situation where Giannis is ruled out, all right, the Celtics are 5.5 point favorites now. If you could get that bet in, Celtics money line, Celtics -5.5, and just bet as much money as you can, frankly, you don't even have to risk any money. You could cash the line out for a pretty significant profit as soon as the line first opens up. But that's the easiest way, I think, to find value in any sports betting, is just bet based on injury news.
And going off that, I know a lot of the books are pretty quick nowadays, but Barstool isn't. So just putting that out there. They're very slow. I'm just saying.
So one other thing that I'll throw in as a tip to that, and this is less relevant, obviously, for the NBA playoffs, because we don't see guys unexpectedly get ruled out that have massive consequence. But for the NBA regular season, the injury reports come out at the same time every day. There's a designated time the injury reports come out, and there's certain massive news drops. So 1:30 p.m. Eastern time and 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. Those are the two biggest news drops. So you can anticipate the news, and just to get a little bit of a head start, log into your sports books like a couple minutes ahead of time, and then just wait for the news, because that gets you a little bit more prepared for it.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I mean, obviously, I think we went over this before, but as far as NBA finals, you still confident in your Celtics bet, or what are your thoughts there?
So the team that, if you just ask me which team is most likely to win the finals as of today, I would say it's the Phoenix Suns. But in terms of my Celtics bet, yeah, it's terrific value. Like if I wanted to, there's no way for that ticket to lose money right now, because it could either be cashed out for 8x or you could hedge it right now. So there's no way for me to not feel good about a Celtics 60-1 finals ticket, because if I wanted to, I could bet the Bucks to win the series right now. The Bucks either win the series or the Celtics win the series, and it lives on. And then you just bet the other sides going forward. So I'm not hedging yet. And I'm not sure when I will. I think if this series was to go to a game 7, I think I would bet the Bucks +5.5, which is what I assume the line would be. And then I would hope for a middle. But yeah, like I feel from a value standpoint, it's hard to not feel good about it.
Yeah, no,
I completely agree. I have a different question now that I've heard you speak for more than a second that I did previously before the podcast. You may not be able to answer this because you have friends in the industry. This is not a sports question. Who do you think who are your favorite 3 comedians, and who do you think is the best comedian of all time?
So I mean, this is in terms of the ones that were most influential on me. It's Patrice O'Neill, who's dead, Norm Macdonald, who's also dead.
Yeah.
And I mean, those are definitely the top 2 for me. It's so if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been in comedy, and I probably wouldn't have even gotten into sports betting either, if I'm being totally honest. But are you guys familiar with Patrice O'Neill at all?
Yes.
No, I only know Norm Macdonald. I don't know Patrice O'Neill.
Okay, so Patrice O'Neill was so, for better or worse, very much himself, and would always speak his mind on any topic, and he can make it funny. And there's something about that I kind of realized that let me, or at least enabled me to be like, I could do whatever I want. And like, it doesn't have to work. It doesn't have to be successful, even in terms of sports betting. Like if I think there's something that has value, I'm going to go bet it. And I don't have like regrets about a bet that lost the next day, because it's like, I just know this has value. I think this is the right side of it. And it's kind of a weird comparison, but just in terms of something I learned doing stand-up comedy also, where you go up and you're trying to work out a joke, you're trying to work out a bit, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I've bombed so many times trying to work on new material that you become so numb to failure, and you find out that the only way to ultimately be successful at anything is you have to take chances. Like you can't win a sports bet if you never bet anything. You have to put something on the line. You have to risk it at some point. And that is where there is a parallel to stand-up comedy, where maybe you have an okay 5-minute set, and you could go and do some, shitty gigs somewhere and you get like okay laughs. But if you want to progress beyond that, if you want to develop more material, or if you just want to develop better stage presence, you have to take chances. And that's also kind of something that's enabled me to take more risks when it comes to sports betting, is because I've failed before and succeeded before when it comes to, comedy or betting, and you realize that it's not a big deal. Like, what the worst thing that happens when you bomb is people just don't laugh, and then it's over. You don't know who any of these people are. They don't follow you home and tell you suck. They don't beat you up about it. It's just, this sucked for a few minutes, and then it ends, and then you're past it. And the biggest fear you could have when you start doing comedy is like, well, what happens if people don't laugh? And you realize it's not a big deal. That's the same thing with betting. Is you start to realize, well, okay, what happens if I lose this bet? You don't lose your house. I mean, if you bet like a moron, then yes, you could lose your house, but that's not what happens. You just lose some money. But if you're placing plus EV bets and you're placing a lot of them over time, you make money over the long haul. So it doesn't matter if individual bets lose. And that's kind of where I think I've developed a mindset from. I don't know if that all follows, but in my head, that all makes sense.
No, that makes total sense. I think also, you're not going to make money if you consistently bet small amount of money on minus 250s over time, because those at the end of the day still lose. If you're going to risk it, it's not certain, right? A minus 250 is not guaranteed to win. Plus 100 obviously is guaranteed to win. But I think what you said is true. The worst that happens is people don't laugh, right? It's not like something drastic happens. It's a pretty shitty feeling, I'd assume, if people don't laugh. But at the end of the day,
it is at first, and then you get used to it, and it's fun.
Yeah. So
because then you could develop that, because then you can't, and it's obviously, it's not like I did stand-up comedy for 20 years, but I didn't, after I got used to it, I didn't really mind bombing, because it was just part of the process, and it was just part of getting better and improving yourself. But then it would be a thing where it's like, hey, I'm not bombing alone. You guys are bombing with me. I'm going to make fun of you guys in the crowd. Like, we're all going down with the ship. We're all in this together. And a lot of times it would kind of turn the set around. But that's the same thing when it comes to taking risks in sports betting. Also, like when Nick asked me before, like, do I think the Celtics are going to win? Like, maybe, I don't know. But I think the 60-1 is good value. Even when I bet the Celtics, I didn't look at them and be like, oh my God, they're a lock to win the championship. It's just, this is good value at 60-1 that I think is a plus EV bet. I never expected them to win.
Yeah, I thought you were crazy at the time, but back on it, it's not it really, I was just looking at that moment right then, not the future, which I should have been, but it's all good.
I also think, like, hold on, just adding on to that, like, I think for new sports bettors, they're also like, all they do, I'm not saying everybody, but most of the questions I see is like, if I put a big name player out there, like Mike Trout basis, everyone always loves it, right? Because it's like, oh, it's Mike Trout. He's got to get it. Like, that's all they know. And they're like, oh, blah, blah. Or so someone texted me like, hey, someone is literally in my DMs every day. Is like, hey, like Steph Curry over points every night. And I'm like, oh, like, why do you like that today? He's like, it's Steph Curry. And it's like, that is all that they say. And like, I'm like, what, like, is there any sort of thing that's going on? And then he goes, because, I'm sure you get DMs, or maybe you don't all the time, of people like, I'm putting my house on this, put my house on that. And the guy, I go, I mean, and the guy responds to me, the Steph Curry guy, is like, oh, it's okay. I only put $10 on it every night. And I'm like, it's just like, it's like no big deal. And then when he said that, I was like, wow, okay, people actually, bet responsibly. Because most people, my comments are like, I'm putting my mortgage on this. I'm taking out a loan and putting it on this. And I'm like, maybe we should, bet responsibly. And for those people, the Steph Curry guy betting $10, you're what Greg is saying. What's the worst that can happen if you lose that bet? You lose the extra guac that you're gonna get in your Chipotle, maybe if your bankroll's higher than $10, right? If you're betting $100, you're just putting $10 on Steph Curry, you like him, it's fine. When Greg says the worst that can happen is you lose that bet, please do not bet. I cannot stress this enough. Please do not bet what you can't afford to lose. Okay. If you're going to be stressed out and can't fill up your gas tank because that bet loses, please do not bet it. I'm just going to put that out there.
I mean, filling your gas tank, that's like what, like $10,000 now. So it's a lot of money filling up the gas tank.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Yeah. I mean, that's about, look, Matt wanted to know your dream UFC fight. Are you a big UFC guy? I've seen some stuff on there.
See, I stalked him for like 3 days.
Yep. Oh, I know. Go ahead. Tell us what do you think as far as like a, I don't know if you've seen your dream UFC fight already, or
you know what? I'll let you answer it. You dream UFC fight, or who do you think your best 3 UFC fighters are ever?
So this is hard because you can't if you could I cross time dimension, like could I put could I just go like prime Khabib Nurmagomedov versus prime George St. Pierre?
Yeah. You do that.
Yeah. That'd be a good fight.
It would that would be something that would interest me, but obviously not possible because guys are different ages and whatnot. But yep.
And Khabib is never gonna lose. So continue.
But there would also be a big size difference if it's because GSP was a 170er and Khabib 155er, so that could certainly make a difference in it. I don't know. I've never really thought about it too much. I mean, as of right now, I would really like to see Khabib come out of retirement to fight Charles Oliveira, which I think is maybe a possibility, assuming that Oliveira's next fight is against Islam Makhachev. And maybe if Oliveira just really pieces up Islam, then him being Khabib's best friend, Khabib being his coach, maybe that encourages Khabib to come out of retirement. But I don't know. There's a lot of fights I would like to see.
John Jones, yes or no? Are you a fan?
As a human being, absolutely not. Or should I just put it the other way? I'm like, as a fighter, I don't know, but as a human being, I like that guy. As a fighter, yes, but I tend to think he's probably a little shop worn at this point in his career. So something that I look at when it comes to older fighters is strike output, in terms of something when guys start to slow down, you start to see them become much less active on the feet. And I kind of think that's where we're at with John Jones right now. If I just pull up some of his metrics from recent stats, and by the way, how long has it been since he fought now?
Long time.
All right. So John Jones.
When did he fight? 2018? 2016?
I want to say 2019. Oh, no, 2020. All right. So his last fight, this was pre-COVID, like a month before the Rudy Gobert incident. February 8th, 2020 against Dominic Reyes. And he lands 104 significant strikes in the decision. I thought he lost, but ultimately he ends up winning a unanimous decision. I did not think that was the right decision by the judges. But fights before then, the fight against Thiago Santos, a 5-round decision, he landed 59 significant strikes. Like, this is a pretty big downtick in terms of output for him. And now he's older. He's coming off a long layoff. He's moving up a weight class. So I don't know. I guess there's some questions also. How motivated was he, considering that he was such big favorites in all those fights? Will he be more motivated fighting against the likes of Francis Ngannou or Stipe Miocic? But I think that he started fighting when he was so young. And then also, I think some of his decisions outside of the octagon don't necessarily lend themselves to an athlete's career being, having a lot of longevity. But I think just some of the strike output we've seen, I think that if he's to come back and try to make another run, I would be fairly surprised if he was to make another undefeated run. I think a loss is in the near future for him if he comes back.
Yeah. No,
I think that's very valid. Nick, any more questions for Greg?
No, I think we should get right into this.
Hold on. I have a question actually. Can you pronounce Greg's last name, since you struggled to get Anderson?
Nope.
It's Ehrenberg. It's not that hard. Can you pronounce my first name? Because I know we've seen you struggle with some easier names before. Go for it.
Greg.
There you go. You got it.
Nailed it. All right. Perfect. Matt, let's go right into this 3-legger. Yes. Nailed it all.
Good job. You better know that by now.
Nick. Boom. Let's go right into this 3-legger that we have for today. The parlay of the day. Matt, I don't know your pick, so why don't we start out with yours? Because I have no idea what you're going to say.
Oh, because I am still debating on mine, hoping for some lines to come out. So I'm gonna go last. I'll be the anchor.
Okay. You're hoping the next 2 minutes that the line's going to come out? No worries. Greg, why don't you start us off real quick?
Yeah, so I am going to take the Celtics money line. I just want to see really quick, what is the best possible number that can be had on that game? let's see. What is the best line available anywhere for the Celtics money line? Plus 220, minus 225. So that's the best number I could find. DK has it at minus 225. Also, BetMGM is minus 225. So Celtics money line, that's going to be the parlay piece for me.
All right, no worries. And then I'm between Mets minus 1.5 at minus 110 and Mets money line at minus 176.
I did such a good job with you. It's unreal. You've
completely, it's McGill. I love McGill from last year. And that's because a coworker of mine is also a huge Mets fan. That's all he could talk about was McGill and DeGrom. So I was actually on DeGrom last year before he got, hyper famous and everybody knew about him, which was a great moneymaker because the books really, didn't recognize at the beginning of the year. But I think McGill obviously has been pitching really well. And then going up against Sanchez for the Nationals, I'm going to just go with the money line since this is a parlay. Let's make it nice and safe at minus 176. So that brings us to plus 125 so far, at least on FanDuel for me. And I'm waiting on Matt. What we got?
Well, am I allowed to throw a very not safe hockey play in here? Because, we'll make this 3-sport, which will make this very interesting.
Oh, yeah, do that. Let's do that. 3-sport.
But I also really want to piss Nick off, and that is the Capitals-Panthers game.
Oh, my God. No,
as far as the safe 3-teamer goes, if you add the Panthers money line to it, what do those odds come out to?
Plus 222.
You got to do that. We'll do a safe 3-leg 2-2-2.
I will not bet this parlay.
No. You root for the Capitals to lose, and for Nick to be upset. That is our goal. I'm sure Greg would completely agree that is the goal for the parlay.
Is Nick a Capitals fan?
100%.
Okay.
Yep.
So yeah. So I have no opinion on the game, but if it is going to make Nick upset, I will bet it for no other reason than for the troll. Right? Sometimes you don't have to bet. Sometimes you just bet for entertainment. And if you could bet to make, if you could place the bet that's going to make one of your friends upset, and then I could screenshot it and send it to him later, I'm on board.
To give some sort of background for the bet, though, the Panthers were down 2-1 playing in Washington. We're 3 minutes away from going down 3-1. They scored, forced overtime in Washington, and then won in overtime to even up the series and now go back home. They're one of the best home teams this year, and I think the Capitals really missed their chance to take the series. They couldn't close out game 4, and I think they're really going to pay at least in game 5 right away.
Yeah, it was awful, but that's nonetheless. I might alter that and go Caps money line just to shove it in your face. Honestly, I would do the plus 1.5 at minus 125, but that's a whole nother story. Greg, thank you for coming on, being our first guest on the podcast. Matt, thanks for coming on as well, I guess. If you want to call out sick one day, Matt, that's perfectly fine. We'll take over. But no, thanks again, Greg. It's been a pleasure. Had fun. And you can find Greg on Awesemo. He does shows daily, especially a lot. If you're into DFS, this is one of the guys to talk to. And Greg, anything else?
Follow me on Twitter at GArenbergDFS. I've got new baseball betting videos that I'm doing. They are Greg's Hot Dong Picks, the hottest dong picks on all of the internet, which I'm just using our data and giving out some of the best bets in our model. Yesterday, the number one was Aaron Judge to homer, and he homered, so that was good. But yeah, yes, we're giving away some free stuff on the shows also. So just watch the videos I do. They're really short. It's like 5 minutes. I give out a few home run picks, and then just leave a comment on it with who you think is going to hit a home run, and I'm giving out some subscriptions to our betting site for that. So check it out.
Awesome. Nothing like a shameless plug. We love it, Greg. All right. No worries. Greg, it's been a pleasure. Matt, as always, I will see you tomorrow. We have another guest on tomorrow as well. It is Birdman. So tune in for that. Guys, have fun. Good luck tonight. Bet responsibly, and we'll see you tomorrow.